who don't know me, my name is Oliver Hall. I am the Trans Health Director for the Kentucky Health Justice Network. Uh, our program offers in-person advocacy and support for trans folks at their medical appointments, as well as financial assistance for gender-affirming care and gender-affirming items like binders, gaffs, packers, breast forms, things like that. We also have these monthly events, usually educational events. Sometimes they're fun community events like board game night, but just space for us to all come together. We also produce some written guides, like things about how to, get a name change, how to find a provider that meets your needs, things like that. Oh, more and more people. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Anthony.
Hi, my name's Anthony Lucan. I have been working in LGBT law for several years now. I used to work in New York City at Lambda Legal with their transgender rights program. I gained a lot of expertise and met a lot of cool people, and was kind of, they do a national standpoint on law. So that's less the like, hi, let me help you actually solve your problems, and more of the like, hey, you're in a literal crisis mode that like you're going to have to go to court and maybe fight something that is going to the Supreme Court. That's kind of where they come in. For my personal preference, I enjoy the bottom down, helping people in the community figure out stuff. So ultimately, my expertise there was in identity documents, and having affirming gender identity documents for trans people particularly is so incredibly important. But also now, having non-binary and gender non-conforming IDs that will, help people identify and have their identity shown in gender affirming documents. But the other point that I want to say is, in the long term, I'm going to state so myself that like having gender on identity documents is not necessarily preferred across the board, right? Like it's not really a good solid means of collecting data. I say that even as a sociologist, where there's just so many different ways of interpretations to it. I mean, if you've got to do it, have people write it in, but that's not where we're at right now. So while we're still working within their rules, this is kind of the back alley or backdoor way into getting into it, I should say. So I'm going to kind of start rolling. If something isn't clear, please holler. I would love this to be as community based as possible. I have a list of questions. I kind of feel like what my program or what I have planned answers most of them, but if it doesn't, again, please holler at me. So I want to start. I sent you all in the chat a link. I wonder if it's better. I'll just share my screen actually. Sorry. Oops, there we go. Sorry. And I was like at the moment gonna make it hard.
You're cutting out a little bit, it seems like.
Okay, let me see.
Try again.
How's this? Is this any better?
Oh yeah, that's great.
Perfect. Okay. So I will go ahead. Sorry that I can't share my screen, but again, I said the link for this document is in the chat and we can get it to you if you don't have the ability to get it. But so can you drop the link one more time? Most certainly can. Boop, boop, boop. Cool. All right. So driver's license in Kentucky right now, what's pretty important is that they are moving from circuit court clerks to driver's licensing regional offices. This is both good and bad, right? Because the circuit clerks have the ability to kind of be like, hey, no, I don't want to do this and I'm not going to, as we saw with Kim Davis, right? Like they have some say. And we're really hoping that driver's regional office is moving to, Department of Transportation. So that's going to be less anybody and more somebody within the Department of Transportation. So ultimately, that's going to be better if you're in like us more city space, because driver's licenses are probably going to stay exactly where you thought they were. If you're in Western Kentucky or Eastern Kentucky or Southern Kentucky, that might actually change for you. In this document, I do have the places where the offices can be found. And then also additionally adding to this is that Real ID is coming out. And so I've kind of been talking about Real ID for, it feels like 10 years and nobody's been listening. But now we're kind of at the point where maybe it might be time to get a Real ID for you. Maybe it might not be. What does this look like? What will this look like if we're also getting passports, right? So I want to say that, like, if you do not have a Real ID, which ultimately is like $20, I mean, I know it's already $20, but it's a little bit more expensive because it's a verified ID. If you don't have one, you can still drive, you can still vote, you can still, buy your cigarettes, buy your alcohol if you're of age. The things that really you can't do is fly domestically and internationally, entering federal facilities. So that could be like the Social Security Administration office, it could be at military bases, nuclear power plants, even the White House. You won't be able to go if you don't have a Real ID. But kind of in between there, if you actually have a passport, that works for what Real ID couldn't be, right? But the passport won't work for driving. Okay, so like you still have to have a driver's license, but the passport works as that. So the great part about the getting a passport, if you're eligible, and eligible means that you were born in the United States, on United States soil. If you are if you were born on a military base, this also still includes if you have a United States issued birth certificate. If you do not have a United States issued birth certificate, this will be more nuanced for you. Obviously, your gender X marker starts where your birth certificate is issued. And so, that's something that I haven't had as much ability to talk with people who have more expertise on that, but I would love to help anybody if they're in that situation. We can talk one-on-one. That's more nuanced, as we know. So the Social Security Department has, I'm sorry, the passport program is now moved into letting people self-select their gender for their passports. This is way better than everything we've been doing before, because before it was like you had to show medical documentation saying that you've met some requirement. Mostly at this point it was still HRT, so you had to be medically transitioning. You do not have to be medically transitioning anymore. That was great news, because that is already a burden for some people. If you don't have the ability to do that, they're not asking for that. They do not want that documentation. You can self-select male, female, X. Hands down, that's it. The only thing that is worth noting is that this particular time, because they have not launched the full program, is that if you are applying today, you can select male, female, X, but you can only apply for just a passport book, and you have to select it to be routine service. So if you wanted your passport card, next month, and you're going to do expedited service, it's not going to have the ability to have the X gender markers. So that's kind of the one point. If you're doing this right now, and they say their hopes are in late 2023. So honestly, what does that mean big picture? That you're going to be able to have expedited service in the passport card. So this doesn't really mean any undue burdens, truthfully. The passport card is really nice if you are going to Canada or a US territory or Mexico. You don't need your passport book for that. For every other travel, you absolutely need your passport book. So internationally, you're going to have a passport book, but you can use the passport book anywhere you want. And so with that, I actually called the Department of Transportation because I was like, I don't trust them a lot of the times, just because a lot of things can be said one way or another. Finally was able to talk to somebody on the line. It took about 30 minutes. And so basically what they had told me was, I said, I was trying to help people who were trying to change their gender marker. This is what the situation was with the passport agency. And so they said, the documentation that we require for processing driver's license in Louisville is you have to have a passport. And if your passport says, it's a 10-year issue passport, which it would be if you're doing this, they would do it. They don't have anything that says that they wouldn't do it. So there's really no reason why they wouldn't, other than, but the circumstance of it's no longer the circuit court clerks. So it is the Department of Transportation, and they don't have anything that they wouldn't. And we should just push forward if they give us grief. I mean, truly, if they give us grief, we could find a lawyer immediately and settle this up pretty quickly, because this is a federal document and it trumps all state documents. The only issue, and this has always been a longstanding issue, is if you were looking to get your birth certificate changed. That is not possible. Any trans person who has medically transitioned will tell you it's also very difficult to get it changed. It won't be, your full name. It will have a line through it. That is its own, that still requires sterilization. So we'll put that one on hold. Ultimately, that is not, once you have moved your gender markers, you will have documents that mismatch. And that is also kind of something that I wanted to bring up, and then know where everybody is in this meeting, or where they might be, especially for people who haven't medically transitioned. It seems less likely that you've probably changed your gender marker capacity. It can be quite a process. You really realize how much things your gender is attached to, which is unfortunate. It is one of those things where you kind of have to tell everybody, and then it all kind of shakes itself loose. But the good thing of having an X gender marker is I'm sure a lot of these programs probably haven't even fully updated them. So as you're going forward, you're probably educating them, and it may or may not matter. They may just delete it because they never needed it in the first place. And a lot of times they will just make you force you at the end of the day to have a secondary gender, which is male or female. Does anybody have any questions or anything before I move forward?
It looks like there might be a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Do you see the chat?
Yeah, I do see the chat.
Okay. And then once you get to that, someone also has their hand raised.
Name change in the passport marked male, Kentucky birth certificate says female. So that's getting the birth certificate to change. That's not what this is about. That unfortunately is a statute that will be very difficult to change. Not saying that it can't be unchanged. It will take probably legal counsel. It ultimately also takes somebody being in a position where they are denied access to something, or denied entirely due to that. It could take just having an issue come up, truly. And so ultimately, the thing that's tough is that you have to get the passport before you can get the driver's license. Okay, so let's start here. If you wanted a name change, that's usually the first place to start, right? Because you're going to have to change everything when your name changes. So let's say there's two camps. Let's say you've already changed your name, or your name is the way you want it to be, and you just want to change your gender marker to X, okay? So what you're going to first do is you're going to have to apply for the passport. And in this documentation, there are the forms for the PDFs. I will show you this here. Sent that in there. And so we can see in the forms that they do give you the option to have male, female, X. And like I said, if you're trying to do this as you roll out of this grouping or before 2023, you want to have it as the passport book, not expedited. And so there is a fee to pay. You do have to provide documentation, which does look like your birth certificate, your social security card, copies of mail. They have a whole list of things in which they say this is what you need. And then you can mail that in and they will issue this passport. So they are not in the business of denying you. They're not in the business of wondering where you're coming from. They clearly said that in this update. In previous years, they also haven't cared except for having the medical verification. So we've moved up a grade now. So then once you have this passport, right, because this is the federal document, and this is what I mean by federal documents always will trump state documents, even though your birth certificate is its own thing, but it is in fact state issued. That's how it kind of looms over you. Your federal document, any trans person, who has already gone through this process, who has the male passport, showed up to the driver's license, saying, hey, I don't care what my birth certificate says. This is what my passport says, and this is what you have to take. And they have been known to give brief in the past, but again, we're not working with circuit courts anymore. So that is kind of my first thought with that question. And so let me also show you the next part. So coincidentally, the Kentucky Department of Transportation, as they're updating all these things, they've given this great list of the valid documents. And the only little thing that you can kind of even like, oh, well, maybe if we're taking this with the most grainiest of salt, this isn't going to work. Why wouldn't this work? The very bottom, they say, in this name or gender change, only one required. A court order changing gender marker. Nobody even knows how to do that. I don't know why they keep saying that. Letter from surgeon verifying completion of gender reassignment. Okay, that is this. We're still talking about the state. An amended birth certificate. Again, still talking about the state. Gender change documentation. In parentheses, details forthcoming. And this was written in February 24th, 2022. There have been no details forthcoming. Nobody said anything. Even that though, gender change documentation would still be fulfilled by your passport. That's the documentation of change. Even if they have a requirement that says, hey, you need to have surgery, doesn't matter. You can still get your driver's license changed. You cannot get your birth certificate changed. This method will not work for your birth certificate because again, there is a law on the books that actively says you have to be sterilized to change your gender marker on your birth certificate. That's the wall that we hit. Let's say you're not from Kentucky, okay? You use this passport, and let's say you're not from Tennessee either, because Tennessee's not gonna let you do it either. Virtually everywhere else, like they may or may not let you have an X gender marker, but they would let you change your gender. I actually, when I was working at Lambda, I helped them put together some info about where. Yeah.
Can I pause you real quick? Brown has had their hand up for a minute.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine. If you wanted to unmute yourself to ask your question, you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah.
Sorry, just a quick question. I'm driving at the minute, but so in the case of, so I'm understanding that it's changed from kind of where and that's really not the issue before when working on it, really necessarily knowledgeable that people could change their driver's license with their passport. So now that has changed, if people still run into that issue, if they're going to be work from that,
Anthony, are you able to hear them? They're cutting out quite a bit for me.
I couldn't really fully gather the question. I don't want to.
I'm so sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, actually, very well.
Okay. Is this better? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So the question is that my understanding is that the county clerk, that was where the issue was occurring, where folks would go and utilize their updated passport with their updated gender markers. And, maybe the county clerks or the clerk's offices would not be, not everyone would understand, this is a thing that someone could do. So that has changed now. So if in that case, if that does happen, I guess, again, even though it has changed, is there any way for folks to not necessarily report that, I guess, but
Mhm.
I guess move forward with that if they still incur
Yeah, totally.
difficulties with changing that going forward? Or do we
Totally.
know?
So I absolutely hear your question. And like I was saying in the beginning, they're actually moving June 30th. So June 30th is when circuit clerks are no longer doing this. We do not have to deal with that. We are dealing with people from the Department of Transportation. So ultimately, when this, well, if you've been denied, I've watched some denials too. And if you're still there having this issue, please reach out to me. I would love to show up with you and being like, first of all, what? No, because I love nothing more than being that person. And I will come to anybody in the state, truly, if you're having this issue, please just let me know. Or, the different organizations within Kentucky that are helping LGBT folks. I sure as heck hope that they would also raise a bell if you're having that issue. But the Department of Transportation is who the circuit clerks would call when they were like, well, I'm going to have to call Frankfurt. Da, da, da. Yes, so I see this next thing is David Nicholson is actually running for mayor, not plugging that or anything, but yes, no more David Nicholson at this prior moment as he has his mind on other things. Can't make promises that he probably won't squeak his way back into the cabinet. Can't make that promise, but he is not in charge at this present moment for the progress that's coming forth. So you could get denied, but there's truly no reason why you should be denied with your federal passport. Like, I'm here to empower you to know that when you go in there, and they really shouldn't. So don't go in thinking it's going to be that fight, because there's really no reason why they should. That your federal passport with whatever gender is enough to supply your gender. Don't even bring your birth certificate. Leave that at home. You don't need it. And it's even for the real ID, you don't need it. It still meets that criteria.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that, because that's what I thought, but have heard some kind of different things. So just really great to clear that up. So really glad. Thank you.
Absolutely.
For providing this resource.
Of course. Yeah. It's super confusing to get it all down, especially because there's nobody's really fully seeing anything. So I want to be as clear as possible from everything that I've understood. It doesn't really seem like it's the climate to try and take off the birth certificate. I mean, for the birth certificate statute, I should say. But even then, I'm never one to be like, oh, it's not the right climate. I mean, they don't know it really is there, but also people don't know what the sterilization means in the bigger picture. So there's always a lot of education on this topic that could be shared, right? Because when you really do force it, it's like, hey, this means this. Are you really still okay with it? I mean, legally, they probably aren't, but there's a couple other things that I just kind of want to add for you all, just in the bigger picture, because I've had the opportunities to talk in a room full of people who are just pitching out well, what is the worst that could happen? So number one, right? You very obviously could get stopped and frisked or talked to, or, you're putting yourself out there as a risk. Most trans people, this is a normal day in the park, right? If you pass, this might make you stand out a little bit more. If you don't pass, again, normal day. If you've never experienced this before, it can be kind of intimidating and scary, not kind of about it. It can be a lot. And depending on where you are, it can be a whole lot. There's some countries you just shouldn't go to. Especially as a trans person, and if you have this X passport, it does put you into a position where they're going to say, oh, you've raised a flag for us if we're not okay with that. There's actually been safety studies done. This is the most up-to-date one that I could find. Oops, wait, I'm sorry, I never sent the Land Illegal one. First, this is states with identification markers already. You'd be surprised. There's a couple there that you've like Arkansas, you've been able to have X gender markers for like since 2010. It was some like nuanced little thing they had going on that they've never repealed. And there's this. This is the like where you can and can't travel and suggestions. Obviously, there's countries on this list that aren't, included, and they do make the point of saying, hey, it is also who you are and where you are and what time you're at. It's so incredibly nuanced, but that is just something that you do want to be mindful of, right? Like Saudi Arabia, probably not going to be very open to your X gender marker, but if you really think about it, probably not going to be open to your gay butt anyways, like that was never really going to happen in the first place. Hate to break it to you, but the X gender marker might really kick you out the door. Or they might not let you in. That's probably really number one. Folks have already had passwords. So if you want to update your passport or you've never had a passport, you can do this. It's just paying the update fee. You will have to get a new picture. You will have to, you have to go through the hoops. You will have to pay. That part sucks. You might like, at this current moment, I'm sure that if you lost it, right, that they would replace it. I mean, ultimately, you still have to input the information. But yeah, if you have a new one, if you've never had one before, this is open to you. Everybody gets it. So nobody is left in the dark unless you do not have United States citizenship. That is the one thing that is left in the dark, which unfortunately that is a bigger issue at hand anyways. I am trying to think a little bit more on this. So, and then there's also, because I mean, in the bigger picture of things, other countries have been having X gender markers on their passports for longer times. Different places all over the world, actually, in India, South America, Germany. And places are really moving forward with this too. I've even seen blogs where it was people talking about, would I have an issue going to China? And like, they say, we can't tell you yes fully or no fully because it's situational, but ultimately what you thought you would have problems with wasn't actually the place, where you had problems. It's truly, if you get into a society, sorry, that's my cat. She makes an appearance on every video. That if you are in a different country, it could be difficult just depending on their culture. But that again is gay culture anywhere you go. So that is kind of my bigger tidbit. If you all would like, I could kind of walk along the process of like, oh, what is getting a passport really? What is that? How much does that entail from me? I know there's also a lot of like name change workshops that ultimately they help you with this kind of documentation too. If you have issues, people who have issues, or this is something bigger than you, like we can always find you somebody to help you get this figured out. It looks quite daunting, but it's actually not as bad as you think. I think maybe getting the picture is the hardest part, but you can truly just go to Walgreens. It seems impressive, but you can get your picture taken there, and they'll upload it and do all the things. That's pretty much the worst of it in my humble opinion, especially now that you don't have to have a doctor's note. Yeah. So would you all like to know how, like the walkthrough of the passport, or you want more hands-on questions? We could go to the questions.
I have a question. I'm also, I think a quick walkthrough might be helpful. My question is, if people run into any problems having like a different gender marker on their driver's license and as opposed to their passport, like if you have an X gender marker on your passport and you have like a not X gender marker on your driver's license. If that creates issues, like, I don't know, with in places you might need both documents.
Right, right. No, short answer, no, right? Like, especially now in these times where it's like, oh, you can self-select your passport. No, you can't. They're not, will people be familiar with it at first? Probably not, right? Unfortunately, being the first, you do carry the burden of educating those around you. Um, and I would imagine just as we would be this, everyone in this meeting is privy to the cutting edge of Kentucky moving into X gender marker, right? Nobody's really fully thought about it, and nobody's really had the opportunity to, right? Because it's always come down to, oh, well, you have to get this elusive court order, which I swear no judge knows anything about. So like, it doesn't exist. It's just a maneuver to keep us down. So this is the method, and we really will be pushing barriers as we go forward. But again, I have already talked to the Department of Transportation and said, hey, look, you're going to have some people walking through your door, and they were like, listen, we don't have anything saying that we can't do that. So like, as in, we can't issue this gender marker. So like, you should just give it a shot. So, and that's really where we're at. It's not like they don't have the ability to put the X on the gender marker, because the passports have X on them, the federal document. So if you're in that in between, right, where maybe you've gotten your passport back, but you, for whatever reason, don't want to update your driver's license, right? That's also okay too, right? I've existed in this world with a birth certificate that says F for 33 years, and my, like, I have a different documentation in a different country where it's like, hey, no, I've been trying to get X on this. Male on my driver's license, it goes all over the place. The only place that it probably will really hiccup in a way that unfortunately is kind of annoying theoretically would be health insurance, right? Because they will make you put one or the other. And I mean, yeah, you will actively be committing insurance fraud in those moments. I think about that every time when I'm like, but that's what you have to do. And nobody's really going to question you. And if they do, you come back to this and being like, well, okay, this is where the court order is of nobody could tell me otherwise. I don't see an expert, so you go ahead and let me know. And again, if you do have those issues where it really does, you get fired or something, that's the moment where you want to call the ACLU, Lambda Legal, right? Those are the people who have the resources of like, this is bigger than this. And those people have been waiting for the day that their perfect like lawsuit walks in their front door, and they would love to just slam dunk it, right? So this kind of is that, all that documentation is really teed up for us. So if somebody really does give you grief, let everybody know. But okay, so we were talking about walking through doing the passport. It really is quite easy. You just fill out information as it comes down. You'll see on number 3 that there is male, female, X, changing gender marker, yes. That's really all they really ask is, what are you doing and why are you doing this? You want a 10-year book, which if you're over the age of 18, you would get a 10-year anyways. The only reason why they issue a 5-year is if you're young and you're going to change, puberty hasn't hit you, which I mean, even trans people before, if you were medically transitioning, they'll still give you a 10-year, and it's like, okay, whatever, your logic. But that is the only reason why. I guess I should also say, if there is anybody under 18 here, you will have to have parental permission. If you do not have double parental permission, it does get very dicey very quickly. I've heard of many situations where, let's say your parents are divorced, your mother is okay with it and your father is not okay with it. And your father's trying to, now sue your mother for neglect or whatever, right? Or abuse. That is something that unfortunately has to be handled in family court in that moment. When it goes to that level, that's beyond the input of anybody outside here. You do need a lawyer or guardian ad litem to advocate on your behalf. And if that is you, we can have conversations and get you hooked up with people. Those people do exist. They exist in Kentucky. They exist in the area. But I just wanted to put that out there, that it is a little different if you're younger and you're past. and your driver's license would ultimately be different as well. If you don't have travel plans, it's okay. Like if you're really just getting this document, this passport for a loophole document, which I'm assuming at least someone is, it's okay. You don't have to, I'm not going anywhere. I'm never gonna go anywhere. I just need this proof of documentation. Fine, that's it. That's all you have to have. They don't really need to know anything more. Again, like I said, at this present time, don't go for the passport card. I usually am an advocate of the passport card, but mostly because, right, it fits in your wallet and you don't have to worry about it. And that's what I've been using on the planes. And that, if you're not, if you don't have an ex-gender marker, that would be the quickest way of doing that, because it is functional on international and domestic traveling. But it really asks you just your residency, where you want this mailed, your date of birth, social security card, US citizen, pretty standard federal questions, not going farther than like what your mother's maiden name is. And if you don't know it, it's okay. You might not have a mother, or you might have been adopted and you don't know. That's legitimately, they just want to know what you know. And again, like I said, birth part is pretty much the picture, but you can go to any pharmacy, say, hey, I need a passport picture, and they know the dimensions. And then it's quite easy after that, where you just mail a form, the picture. You can write a check. I think you can also pay online now and submit that payment, printing it off, put that in there, show that you've had that verification, and they'll get it to you. It takes way less time than I always imagine it to be, but it also takes more time than you probably want it to. We're talking 6 to 12 months, I would say. 12 being worst case scenario, especially during pandemic and COVID. They've been super slow. But if it were outside of that range, then I would probably be like, hey, something seems up. But if you're just getting a book and it's not expedited, they'll probably let you know what their process is, or where you are in queue if they've received it. Does anybody have any questions? No?
So can you only get the X on your passport, or can you get it on your driver's license too?
Right. So at this moment, you can get them from the passport agency, right? They are openly putting it out there into the world saying, hey, we're doing this. Yes. The Kentucky driver's license department is not saying anything, first of all, right? But what they've said in the past is, hey, we will change your gender marker if you have a document like a passport, a 10-year passport that shows your gender marker. So using their words, this is a 10-year passport that you would be getting that has an X gender marker. And there's really no reason, nothing on their books that says, hey, X gender marker, what do we do? That's that little line that they've kind of been saying to us for a long time, like, oh, it's not in the system, but that's moot, because they're going to have to be able to accept it from other people in other states. Like it's moving faster than they can handle, and they know that. So federally, they have to support that angle, which is why I kind of have to believe that they've moved it from circuit court to Department of Transportation, because it's now gotten a little bit more nuance for them. Anybody else have any questions?
I think people just wanted clarification. If you
Yeah,
meant
the 6 to 12.
Okay.
It can truly take 6 to 12 months to get your passport. I'm not saying that's standard. I'm saying that's COVID. They were really slow. They were very backed up. It's taken a long time, and like their end of day message is like, hey, well, this is like federal law that presides us. We can take as long as we want, and unfortunately they can't, right? Because when it comes to like immigration and things like that, they're going to go things with their fine-tooth comb, which really just means they're going to do it 9 to 5. And if you didn't make it that, if you didn't make it Monday, well, then you're going to be there Tuesday. That's just however they roll in is how they roll in. So yeah, if you have an old passport and it's still good, you can always update your passport and get it redone into this. It doesn't have to just be, oh, new passports only. No. And you don't need a medical documentation to support this. You can just say, hey, great, now you offer this ability to let me self-select it to have an X gender marker. That's all they want. That's all you have to give. And that's the end of the day. The most unfortunate part is the picture and paying. And I know that different organizations are always around to help trans people with paying. You know, any of the Kentucky organizations here already have those funds together where they can help you with the name change. This follows, you know, this would fall under that. This is documentation that will keep you safe. Gender affirming documentation is real care, you know. So we can also always, you know, crowdsource those links too at the back end and saying, hey, this is now an option, who's going to be able to give us money and help us fund for that. So don't let that be your barrier either. I know that that can be difficult for people, but ultimately this is important and keeping you safe and keeping you validated. So you should prioritize that and take the money if it's being offered if you don't have the money to do it for yourself. Yeah. So, but I do want to say, right, before fall of 2023, you cannot do the expedited. So it just has to be normal, just has to be the book. Can't be the card. And I wonder and would project that if you did the book and the card, the book would have it and the card wouldn't. I don't know what they're saying on that, but they've been very adamant about it just being the book. And so for it to work on the Kentucky side, it has to be a 10-year issue, which is what they would give you anyways, unless you're under the age. Yeah, I can give you my email address. You can contact anybody at Kentucky Health Justice Network. They will most certainly get you in touch with me. I'm around on the internet. You can add me on Facebook. My name is Anthony Lucan. A picture of me and my cat. Yeah, just holler at me and I would love to help you out. I have been known to go down with people. My dad is a retired lawyer. We both love to go down and just be jerks. Him more than anybody. But also, like, you're not doing anything that's wrong. I really want to reaffirm you all with that, okay? Like, for as stupid as those assholes are, it's not you, it's them. That was the circuit court clerks. I have a better belief in the Department of Transportation because the clerks just were jerks. I've seen them be jerks across the board on a many myriad of issues. And the Department of Transportation just doesn't care like that, from my experience. But I hold space for other people. It's actually Anthony Lucan, Luken. Type it out. And that is me on Facebook. And if you need follow-up information, because also I know that this is specific to each and every one of you, right? So like maybe you have a driver's license from Minnesota, right? But you were born in Ohio and you somehow landed up in Kentucky and you haven't updated your driver's license, right? That's all pretty particular. It's not that this is really going to happen, but I guess if we picked out the timing, you know, you would have to couple your name changes and gender changes. I think that's always best case scenario if that's where you're at freshly. Because it's just going to save you a lot of grief because you just have to go back and do a lot of things. And if you are trying to do that name change, there's great documentation at all the different all the Kentucky organizations that work with trans folks have some kind of documentation. You can also come on, hit me up. I'm more than have that information as well. You do have to submit a new picture, unfortunately, even if it's but they give you your old passport back. So if you looked hot in the old one, you still get it back. But you can't use it, right? You just get to keep it for your hottie collection. Is there any other questions I can answer?
Oh, the link needed access. Have you checked the ones that I sent later? I sent one where the access should be changed. I will send it again though. Let me know if that works. In the meantime, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or just unmute yourself. There aren't that many of us here, so I don't think you're gonna scream over each other.
Anybody got a question? Sorry that my link is giving us grief.
Is there like a good resource for looking up like our transgender rights for dealing with like authorities?
Yeah, I wish they were better and more inclusive and more up to date, right? As time is turning, it's only gotten kind of worse. I know that they're like, and I honestly, the documentation that I can even think about is so like 2009, which is like, I don't know, really gonna help us out here, is it? No. So I know that there are groups of people that we're talking about because after, everything that happened with the protesting, that there were trans people that were arrested and we were documenting the, like what was going on. And I know that there were communications going through to the police officers of like, what do you do if you're talking to a trans person? Which I mean, ultimately, right? So I can't think of anything particularly that's either tailored to Kentucky or to trans people. I would say that the same same information that they would provide to Black people would obviously apply to all white trans people, with the caveat of saying, okay, what do you do if you're put in solitary confinement? That is one of those things that I do know that they will go by your birth certificate. If you are arrested, I mean, how are they going to get your birth certificate? But they have that in their documentation system. So if you are going to prison, that is where you will go and be directed. If you are transgender and non-binary, the likelihood of going into solitary confinement is pretty high because they pretty much don't know what to do with you. Which is its own level of like, we can go the whole thing, we can go into it, right? So I know that there are lots of groups that do help with incarceration and then therefore have particular assistance with transgender issues. But if I do find any information, because I do love a good research, I will also post that on the Kentucky Health Justice Network site. But I do not know of anything particular. And I can almost feel very positive that prison systems will not be accepting ex-gender markers anytime soon because they're barely letting us in with our medicine.
Yeah. Thank you.
Does that answer it? I know that's not necessarily the answer we want to hear.
No, that gives me some research to do. That gives me a direction. Thank you.
Yeah. And I know there are people out there doing that work, so we can figure that out. Anybody else have any other questions? Northern Kentucky, yeah. I know of just the regional ones that do all the work bumping along. And I know that it doesn't actually matter what county you're in. I know all of the ones that are out there will financially support you, assist you with, nobody here is just saying Jefferson County or Fayette County. I know that for a fact. And if you still having trouble, again, yeah, signal up the flare on any of these sites because all of us would love to gobble up trans people who need assistance and give you help if we could and can. So please don't feel like you can't take those resources.
Yeah, while our program is pretty much health focused, if you all are having issues with your identity documents, we can just email transhealth@khjn.org and we can direct you to people who have more specialized knowledge there, maybe potentially Anthony, but we can also get you those contacts. I'm going to send out an email after this event with the PDF, just in case anyone's having trouble with the link still. So we'll have that. And that will have all of the links that Anthony has dropped in the chat throughout this, as well as a lot of the information they've talked about.
Anybody else have any questions? Yeah. Definitely. And don't be afraid to talk to the media about your experiences either, because like ultimately what I've learned through the biggest picture of it all is that people have no idea that trans people exist and that they're actually talking to a trans person probably right now. And that like, oh wow, there's all these hoops that are so unnecessary to go through, right? Like that is literally the experience. And then if somebody is giving you grief, they should not be elected into it again. Let us know who they are. We love to create a list of like, hey, let's not give this person our energy or time. Because also, like, there might be, I've always thought about running for circuit court clerk and then being like the one trans person that's like, yeah, come to me. I'm there on Tuesday, you know, and sometimes that is kind of what it is. And I mean, if we know, we know, and we will all just go and we will make this work. But it's not like that to our knowledge as of right now. But if it is that way, we will figure that out.
I would also, yeah, I would encourage if you go and you have a positive experience, please share that also. Share that in our like all of our like localized support groups.
Because we all need it, obviously. The good
Share
news.
that with me, and I will add it to our list of information and pass it along when other people need the same resource. So yeah, just as good and important to share positive experiences as negative ones, so we know who to go to and who to avoid.
Absolutely. Anybody else looking for something? Got an additional question? Okay. Well, thank you all for letting me discuss this with you. You know, if you ever have any questions, please don't feel like you can't hit me up. I'm always interested in your comment, you know, in what's going on, even if it's particularly nuanced, lay it on me. Yeah, because, and I'm definitely here to empower you that you can do this. You can figure out this form. We can get the money. We can figure it out. If having an X gender marker is what you want, get the passport, then you can get the driver's license. Gotta leave the birth certificate at home, unfortunately for right now, but we will figure that out. We will figure that out at some point. So please don't feel discouraged.
Thank you so much, Anthony, for sharing this information.
Yeah, thanks for letting me do it. I as this changed, I was like, oh, I gotta pick somebody to talk to about this. I'm really glad that you all were excited and interested, and